views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists and writers and editors and reporters, people who cover the borough of the Bronx and print media. And usually in our second segment, we talk to photojournalists or photographers or filmmakers or videographers, anybody who works and artists as well, anybody who works in a different medium. And this evening, we're going to do one more thing. We're going to look backwards. And we're going to take a look at a retrospective of some of our best segments, selected in part by our producer, Rebecca Hemick. In our first segment, we're going to visit with a young man named Griffin Kelly, who I'm very happy about because he started with the Mott Haven Herald. When he did the segment we're going to show you, he was an intern at City Limits, and now we understand he's with the New York Post. So wherever he goes, because he cut his chops here in the Bronx, he's going to be taking a bit of the Bronx with him, and that can only benefit all of us in the long run. This particular segment was about the 4 new Metro North stations that are coming to the Bronx that we hope will energize our borough economically, make it easier for some of the people in the East Bronx to get downtown, etc. So here he is. This is from July 21st, 2021. Griffin Kelly, then an intern at City Limits.
First of all, just where you're at in your internship. We've talked to numerous interns from City Limits, and our buddy Jean Marie Everly is kind of the editor there and always in charge of the internship program. So what have you been doing as an intern at City Limits?
Right now, the 2 main beats that I'm covering are transportation and arts and culture. So I've done a couple of stories on each, maybe like 2 or so of transportation and 2 or so of arts and culture. I've also taken just a few photos. I'd say in terms of the amount of pieces I've written so far, maybe like 6 or something.
Mm-hmm. And you enjoy the work. You love this work. This is what you want to do.
I do. Yeah. I have
asking you.
Yeah, I have an arts and culture background just in terms of like my reporting, but it's nice to learn about transportation because it forces me to learn certain city policies that I knew nothing about before.
Right, and listen, I believe we talked about this way back when you've been with us before. Journalists nowadays, you got to know podcasting, you got to know how to do video. Certainly, if you work for any newsroom, they're going to I was going to say may assign you. They will assign you stuff that you were like, yeah, I don't know anything about that. So this is great. So the story that you wrote that I really caught my eye is about the 4 new Metro North stops that we're getting at Hunts Point, Parkchester, Van Ness, Morris Park, and Clark City. And your story, the headline was Bronx residents and a developer weigh in on what future Metro North stations might bring. Mm-hmm. And I think this is fascinating. It's going to cost $1.5 billion. We're probably not going to really see anything till 2025, 4 more years down the road. But Bronxites would like to see good development. If it's going to happen, let's make it worthwhile. What did you discover in your reporting of the Metro North stations that are coming to the Bronx?
Mm-hmm. So I attended meetings for both the Parkchester Van Ness stop and I believe the Morris Park stop. And, a lot of people are excited. I want to say that right away. They're excited because these are places that access to a subway is pretty difficult. You might need to take a bus and walk a couple of minutes or maybe more than a couple of minutes to get to either the 6 train or the 5 train. I think this is kind of part of a big push that both the city and state are doing, where they want to make the Bronx a little less car dependent and maybe catch up to the type of infrastructure that Manhattan and Brooklyn has. So some people are really excited. They're like, oh, I can get to Midtown Manhattan in about 15 minutes as opposed to an hour of what I used to commute. And this is all part of the Penn Station Access project. which is supposed to make it easier for people from the Bronx, Westchester, and Connecticut to get to Midtown Manhattan. Um,
And also, let's interject, lessen the extreme load that's on our highways.
of
Keep
course.
cars out of Manhattan, give people greater options. I mean, there's many win-win-win things here. So what were people saying? And folks who have been involved in the Bronx and know what Bronx people are thinking about can already imagine what some of the concerns are.
Yeah, so these meetings, they were hosted by the Department of City Planning, and it's basically they're seeing it as an opportunity with these Metro North stations coming in. How can we develop the surrounding communities? And while some people are excited about the easy access to the trains and things like that, other people are concerned that this can lead to gentrification because in the DC, I mean, the Department of City Planning, outlines right now, they're very basic, very broad. They're still very much in the planning phase, like the name of the department says. Uh, some of their ideas include, adding mixed income housing, bringing in new types of businesses while still supporting the old ones. And as nice as these things sound, there's still people who are always going to be cautious that, okay, I don't want to get priced out of my neighborhood that I've been living in for
Sure.
decades.
Griffin, as you know, I've been doing media in the Bronx for a lot longer than you.
Mm-hmm.
People in the Bronx have a chip on their shoulder. They've been burned so many times. There have been development projects that have gone out of whack, and all of a sudden prices have gone up. I mean, we've covered them all. The Jerome Avenue rezoning, there's still dissatisfaction. There was displacement there. The Southern Boulevard rezoning was turned away. The council member was concerned again that there wasn't enough documentation. So I want to start with the positive, and then we'll go to the negative. The positive is, for the first time that I can recall, there's really a look at the whole picture. Where you mentioned it and you talk about it in the article. I mean, the outreach, the area studies, they're talking about safer streets for pedestrians and cyclists, more parking space, more park space, championing old and new businesses, setting up a job pipeline. I mean, these are all check marks for people in the Bronx. The problem is when we, I don't want to stay with the problem. Let's stay positive. This is an overall look at what we might get. That is a first, because normally they'll put up a mall and then 2 years later they'll say, we never figured out the traffic plan. So I guess from that point of view, the city is trying it the right way.
Yeah, I would say so. I think a big portion of these development plans that could come are, like you said, making safer streets in terms of crosswalks and signage, as well as new bike lanes. This is kind of separate, but it's a little tangent. Also coming to the Bronx soon, I'm working on a story about this, is the first e-scooter pilot program.
Right.
So there's going to be thousands of e-scooters in the East Bronx.
Right. So I could just tell you from experience, oh, good, let's put it in. People will love the e-scooters, but then all of the other ramifications, where they're going to be, where they're going to park, what is acceptable process for them, either to register them or to how they get operated, that'll come later after we have a lot of problems. So then on the negative side is, gentrification is a big thing. You want to bring new money into the Bronx. At the same time, people who have lived here for many years don't want to get displaced.
Yeah, I think one of the most worrying things that I think some people are picking up on at the meetings.
Did you say boring?
No, worrying.
Oh, worrying. Okay.
Yes.
One of those boring things. No, this is pretty interesting stuff.
Oh, yes, it is. One of the worrying things is that the developer that showed up at the Parkchester meeting is this guy, Joel Wiener. He's the CEO of this real estate development company called Pinnacle Group. And he kind of doesn't have the best reputation, over the past 20 years. I think in about the early 2000s, he was buying up a lot of these cheap apartment buildings in lower income black and brown communities, and he was renovating them and passing the cost on to the tenants, which is legal, but the tenants are clearly not able to keep up with those prices, so they're either evicted or priced out.
What you're saying feeds right into what I was saying. Bronx people have seen this before. They said, you know what, the city is working up this big plan. We're all excited about the new amenities that we're going to get. On the other hand, you got this guy here. We didn't trust him before,
Hmm.
and he's going to make I mean, we've been down this road 1,000 times.
When
So
you
you
hear a guy
think,
like him
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
"I'm talking to DCP," it's like, oh, now I don't have a good feeling about this.
That's exactly right. Um, do you? I hate to ask you this. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
if you can even answer it. Do you think the city, from your interaction with DCP and others involved in this, do you think the city has the guts to stand up and say, you know what? And I'm not picking necessarily on
Mhm.
this guy from Pinnacle. We want to do this right. We don't want people to get displaced. We don't want the rents to go skyrocketing, and they manage it in a way that will incorporate these concerns.
I mean, I really hope they do because the discussions around this type of community development started in 2018, and they're still very much in the beginning phases of like, how can we make this community better for the people who live here now? You know, is that easy to trust? Not really. You know, for somebody living in the Bronx, it like you say, people have heard this type of stuff before. Why is now any different?
And you know what really is laid out before us is two very large changes. And one is we'll have a new mayor, and it will be interesting to see how the new mayor handles these kinds of things. Will presumably, if it's Eric Adams, will he stand up for communities and get DCP to handle this right? And then also we'll have a new city council, and will the council members, to the degree they can, draw the line and say, we want this to work out right. These are, very, very big challenges. So now for you, we got about a minute left. For you, do you do a story every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whenever it turns out? And what would you be working on next? Like what's coming up?
I try
I
to
guess
get
the e-scooter thing you already mentioned.
Yeah, the e-scooter thing, I'm working on that. I try to get about one story out a week, and then maybe I'll go out and take some photos as well. The e-scooter pilot program, that's what I'm working on right now. I'm also looking into how arts programs help with reentry the process for formerly incarcerated people. That's another story I'm working on. Um,
Or
a whole lot.
I got to interject.
Yeah.
You're hitting right to the core of what many people in the Bronx are thinking about. I mean,
Mhm.
to me, this is the kind of out of the box thinking we need to do as we emerge from the pandemic. How are we going to really do things that'll make things better?
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Anyway, so there you go. Griffin Kelly from City Limits. Thank you so much for joining us. He's an intern there. I thank you personally because we need good young journalists, especially people like you in the Bronx that are, really going to investigate fully and give people the Bronx real good information. So I appreciate you. We appreciate City Limits, and I'm sure we'll see you again when you do the e-scooter thing or the arts and with incarcerated people thing. Let's have you back. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for always having me on and encouraging me to do more.
Okay, there you go. A retrospective back to July 21st of the past year. And we thank Griffin Kelly for joining us. And we certainly wish him luck in his new position over there at the Post. And guess what happens now? We take a short break and we'll come right back and we'll bring on a comic book writer who actually is from the Bronx. I know that because he lives in my neighborhood. We'll do that in a moment. Don't go away.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
This is always an exciting segment when Alex Simmons comes and joins us. In this case, he talked about his recent award for Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda. So let's visit once again with Alex Simmons. Again, this goes back to September 23rd of the past year. Take a look. But what I'm really excited about, you just won an award. If I say Black Panther, people will know what that means. The Tales of Wakanda. You're going to hold up something here.
Yes, there we go. Then we got to get right on the no, it goes this way. There we go. Okay. Yes, this is an anthology of 18 stories about the Black Panther and Wakanda. So it's not just the Black Panther, but it's the world of Wakanda. And the anthology was conceived by the journalist and writer Jesse Holland, who pulled together 18 other writers, myself included, to do individual stories about the Black Panther, about the Dora Milaje, about Wakanda itself, about the lineage, all of that. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful collection of this. And this just came out, the book just came out, I believe it was March of this year. But they also did an audio book version of it, and that just won one of the best awards. So we are all quite excited. And it's a funny thing too is one of the other writers on this is Nikki Giovanni. That's a name that may ring a bell with a few folks out there.
But you should say who she is.
Nikki Giovanni is one of the well-known Black poets from I think it goes back to the late 70s, 1970s. She's also a professor and a number of other scholarly pursuits and accomplishments. But she's very well known as a poetess and a writer. And I met her when I guess she was in her 20s and I was like 18 or something like that. We just met when she was doing an interview and we talked. It was like suddenly we became fast friends. And then I didn't see her for like decades. And then we ran into her again at a Comic-Con, which was funny.
Over this project.
Right. And no, it was a different project in South Carolina. And then we didn't see each other for another like 10 years. And then suddenly here we are in this book. So the universe is saying something about Simmons and Giovanni that we are, connecting every now and then to work on something, do something, see something, talk about something, and then onward again. So.
I want to rewind the clock. So,
sure.
Launched right into that. Your background, though, really has been as a comic book writer. You won the Inkpot, the prestigious Inkpot Award in 2017. Talk to me about comic book writing, what you did, and maybe how it has grown and developed into even other things that you work on now.
Well, the funny thing about it is, for my mother, a dear, lovely, warm, wonderful person as she was one of, she was from that generation that basically saw comic books as funny books. They had no purpose other than some sort of minor entertainment, and it wasn't real literature, it wasn't real writing or reading. But she never stopped me from reading them. She never stopped me from enjoying kids shows and things like that. And so the bottom line was, I had this active imagination. I was always making up stories and playing with my action figures, not dolls, now action figures. And so my mind was always whirling with these possibilities. And so as I grew up, I actually went into acting first. I graduated high school of art and design, studying art, and illustration, and then pursued acting. And for a number of years, I did some stage work and some, extra work in films and a little bit of work on television and voiceover work.
We get to the comic books, and then you created a Blackjack, which was an iconic character.
Right. Well, what I was saying is the comic book connection was the writing in that of going from performing to writing and from writing plays and things to writing comic books. And so, again, the imagination was just crazy. And yes, I created this series called Blackjack, which is about an African-American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. This is one of the books. This is one of the prose books about him. But, it's a Black action-adventure hero. And again, from my childhood, there weren't any. There was always white action-adventure heroes, white detectives, white monster fighters. And in my head, I wanted to be able to do that kind of cool stuff or imagine myself and my friends doing that stuff. So when you get older, if you're fortunate enough, you can follow that sort of pathway and create what wasn't there. And so that's what I got to do.
There's a very fascinating development there because I don't know that we've talked about these kinds of things for years. I don't know that I've ever heard you say it was kind of your fantasy acting that created that character. I'm not aware that you're maybe you
Normally, when we talk, we're talking about the Kids Comic Con, which is a whole nother thing, and some other stuff. So, yeah, I don't think
that's
I've had
fascinating.
the chance to speak on that.
And then the other thing I want to tell you, when I was a youngster, my parents, who were both educators, were very concerned because me and my brothers, all we read were comic books. And I think they went to our pediatrician and they said, they seem to be smart guys, but all they read is comic books. And the pediatrician said, just as long as they're reading.
They're reading.
And
Exactly.
so, I think even there was
Exactly.
one point my father put the DC comics at the top of the closet so we couldn't access them. But then ultimately we got them back. You do a lot of teaching. You and I, we talked about it earlier on our other program, Bronx Talk. You had brought kids who are creating comic books. What's it been like being with kids now through the pandemic? I'm thinking that the fantasy, that their ideas, because they've been cooped up and they've been wearing masks, now they're thinking about other things, or I don't know. What do you find in their heads that expresses itself in the comic book work?
This has been interesting, and I'll just try and be very succinct about this. As far as Kids Comic Con, we did a couple of virtual comic conventions because, yes, the kids are all cooped up and didn't have a lot to look forward to, and this was one outlet. So we did a live puppeteers and artists doing demonstrations, streaming from their homes, and also we had recorded segments of similar things. And that was like a what we called a Saturday morning special, and we did it that way. I was at the same time I was going virtually into some after school programs and doing the work that way as well. And a KCC Kids Comic Con received an award and a grant this past year. We got it in the fall of 2020, and we were working on it in 2021, where we were using comics again through the virtual computers and situations. We were working with young men, African American men and Latinos, and using comics to explore racial identity and to explore heritage and culture and how they see their future and the world. And so literally the imagination or the imaginary power of comics to envision anything and suddenly create it was very powerful during the pandemic. What was challenging was that kids were spending so much time on computers doing the schoolwork and everything else that you had to approach teaching a fun activity differently on computers. You had to not think of it the same way, like a sort of an organized workshop. You had to give them play time. You had to give them breathing time, because really it's like how many hours do you want to stay glued to the screen?
Right. And I will say, I mean, what I knew there was going to be a catch in there, and I fully understand it. What I was going to say, and the way I started it, it seems to me if you can get them to focus on these things, this is the best thing because they can play out their fantasies, they can color and draw and become a superhero.
Exactly.
Solve the pandemic. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, again, the imagination, what is, and then what if. And literally, once you give them what if and get out of their way or encourage them, they go off into some remarkable things, which we don't have time to go into. But during some of the workshops, there were some remarkable, wonderful revelations or creations that some of the kids came up with, including a festival we had April 30th. We had Kids Comic Con Africon. So we had kids online from the United States as well as from Africa listening to African comic book artists talk about their process and their pursuits and showing their work. And the kids were blown away. And one turning point for a group of kids was there was a translator for one of the artists because he did not speak English. And the kids were going, why is that lady talking about her artwork when we're seeing this man's artwork? And we had to explain that she's translating for him. And the kids went, translating? I said, yes. And it was like, it appeared to be the light bulb went on for them, that they had not realized that even existed, that people could translate
Wow.
from African dialect into English, and yet this man is talking about something they understood, which is drawing comics and having an imagination creation.
And talk in detail about it. You've traveled the world literally talking about comic books, which I have learned through you is a universal language.
Absolutely.
Russia, Africa.
Serbia, Russia, Serbia, Holland, Amsterdam, and Harlem in the Netherlands. I've been to a number of locations, India, and yes, it is a universal language because we are all human beings.
Well, wouldn't it be nice to find things like this that continue to bind us? So what's next? Let's see. You say you never stop. You got anything on the list now? That we need to know about?
Well, I'm right now. I'm working with a group of students out of the New York Film Academy, where I'm teaching screenwriting. I have a property that's sitting in Hollywood. It's been optioned, and I'm waiting for someone to sign on the dotted line where we have our fingers crossed. So I'm hoping that will become a reality. And once it does, I will be happy to come back and tell you about it. And we have a couple of really great projects coming up for kids with comics through Kids Comic Con. So I'll be talking about that the moment it's locked in its definite form and dates.
When I think about the best of the Bronx, Alex Simmons is on my list because you're just doing it. It's not about fame. I mean, a little fortune wouldn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, it would be nice, but
But you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. You found a vehicle to communicate to people, to bring people together. Your social media, how do people get to you?
I will say that quickly, or you can post that, but I'll just back you up with one quick thing, and I'll just simply say that I've been blessed enough that kids I started teaching when they were 13 years of old here in the Bronx, 13 years of age, are now in their 30s, and many of them have come back to tell me the positive impact that the arts have had. So yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I can be found on Instagram at Simmons Alexander. That's my name backwards. On Facebook is Alexander Simmons or Simmons Here and Now.
Okay, thank you so much to Alex for being on our show, and I'm sure as things go on, he will be back with us. So right now it's my time to say good night and stay safe, be well. Thanks to our producer Rebecca Hemick, and we'll see you next week. Good night.